okay, I want to be carbon neutral. In the case of like a Microsoft or an Amazon, we want to be carbon negative, actually, meaning put projects into the environment once we've gone carbon neutral. How do you achieve that? And that's really the warm and fuzzy is I'm going to plant some trees. People understand trees. There's a physicality to it. More importantly is how do we hedge this? How do we actually put it into a regulated environment where, as a listed company or a regulated bank or such, that we can actually prove we're doing something? There's actually no exchange to do that on today, amazingly. There's a lot of over-the-counter markets. There's different countries. Japan is one of them. Korea is another that have created these emissions trading schemes, ETSs. China has now moved into that with their own style of it. But it doesn't make it fungible, meaning what's good in Japan is not necessarily good in Korea, even though they've got their own goal. Everybody's trying to figure out how do we offset 1 metric ton of CO2, and that's the underlier. If you look at other commodities, if you look at gold, people understand what an ounce or a kilogram of gold is. If you're in Chicago, people understand what a bushel of wheat is. If you're in New York on NYMEX or in London on ICE, IPE, you understand what a barrel of oil is. People don't necessarily understand what a ton of CO2 is. You can define it though, and it does get traded as an asset, but again, it doesn't sit in any global regulated exchange, and that's what AirCarbon is. AirCarbon is taking that next step. I've been very fortunate over my career to have been part of benchmark building. Going back to the early 80s, I was working on the formation of the refined products markets in New York, gasoline and fuel oil. And then in 83 on the crude oil launch, which today we take as a benchmark, one of the benchmarks, WTI. And then in 1990, I worked on the natural gas, Henry Hub natural gas contracts, and then traded those for 12 years in New York before coming out to Asia, and worked in Japan and China and Korea and then Singapore and on out into the Middle East and worked on the Dubai Mercantile Exchange and defining Middle East crude benchmarks. We take that all for granted today. Nobody hesitates to use a WTI or Brent contract to hedge their crude oil, whether they're in Switzerland or Swaziland, or Tokyo or Singapore. It's accepted, but for some reason, people don't accept the standard around carbon because it's been very state-run. Well, that's changing. With the advent of the ESGs, that's understood everywhere. The UN protocols around sustainable development goals, that's understood everywhere. So applying that to a fungible standard around an exchange is really the goal for AirCarbon. That somebody in Tokyo, as much as in Singapore or in Seoul or Shanghai or Abu Dhabi or London can hedge an underlying ton of CO2 on a standardized product on a regulated market. And that's where I think the next level is for carbon. Yeah.